Welcome to the fourth video in this series on melody. In the last video, we discussed phrase structure, how motifs can be organized into larger statements, and what differentiates a question from an answer in music. In this video, we are going to take the next step in understanding melodies by discussing larger form structures within music. We'll cover how music can be divided into individual sections, how you can plan climactic moments in your music, and how you can consciously and deliberately develop your music so that it tells a story. Before we get started, I want to take a quick moment to thank my amazing patrons, without whom I would not be able to make these videos. I appreciate each and every one of you. If you're interested in becoming a patron, the link is in the description of this video. All proceeds go towards helping me make tuition payments for school. With that, let's get started. So, let's start by reviewing something from the last video. If you recall, there are two primary building blocks to a monomotivic phrase. The first is a local peak. The local peak could be anything. It could be the highest pitch found in the phrase, the fastest rhythmic figure, even the most dissonant chord, you name it. The second building block consists of numerous motivic statements, each one focused first on building into and then away from the peak. Now, it's important for us to review this concept because the very same structure is found on several different levels throughout the approach we will take in this video. Throughout history, there have been many different strategies taken towards structuring music. Many of these strategies even went on to become classical forms and structures like binary form or ternary form and even sonata form. However, in recent years, these traditional structures have found less and less favor in the very young art of film scoring. The reason for this is simple. Film music does not exist for its own sake. It is first and foremost written in service to a larger story. Traditional structures like sonata form were not developed with the specific needs and requirements of film music in mind, and as such are not always appropriate or even helpful for a given soundtrack. Instead, each film composer has been left to study these forms and learn from them, applying their lessons to develop new approaches and styles. The approach we will focus on in this video is one such contemporary style. Now, as I mentioned earlier, monomotivic phrases focus on using motivic statements to first build towards a local peak and then away from it. In longer pieces, the next level is something that we will call a musical paragraph. A musical paragraph consists of a number of phrases, all grouped together to make a single section of music. These phrases are organized similarly to the motivic statements in a phrase, meaning that each paragraph has its own local peak. All other phrases focus on first building into and then away from that peak. Any number of phrases can be used in a single paragraph. So long as there's more than one phrase working together, they can form a full section of your music. In order for a group of phrases to be working together to create a cohesive paragraph, they must all work with similar thematic material, meaning that they are each built from the same basic motivic idea, albeit with some variation between each phrase. In addition to this, the punctuation throughout a paragraph can vary from phrase to phrase. In other words, you can sprinkle questions and answers throughout a single paragraph, just like in a real conversation. However, the strongest and most definitive answer must be at the end of the very last phrase in the paragraph. This is so that you can provide a natural ending section, so your music can move on to a new musical idea in the next paragraph. Finally, the thematic material used in the next section, immediately after a paragraph, must clearly be built on different material. Either an entirely different motif, or at the very least, a very strong and audibly unrecognizable variation of the original statement. Each paragraph in a piece of music is meant to tell a different part of the story. As such, they can differ in length, in intensity, style, you name it. You could almost think of each paragraph as its own chapter within a book that's telling the same story as your music. However, a chapter is only a small part of a larger story, and the same is true for a musical paragraph. Each individual section in a piece of music can help tell the story, but there still needs to be a larger structure as a whole to help form the music. And this is where the third and final level of our structure comes in. Here we observe the same exact pattern that we've been working with. Every piece of music will have a local peak or a climax to the piece as a whole. This climax, just like the local peak of a phrase, will be the singular moment where multiple parameters of the music will reach their highest or lowest extreme. Every paragraph or section of your music is used in service to first build into and then away from this climactic moment in the music. And that's why it's a very good habit to start every single piece you write by first considering what the climax will look like. Think of what the most climactic moment of your story is going to be. How will your music portray that moment? How will the tempo, texture, timbre, rhythm, registers, articulation, dynamics, melody, and harmony all help tell the story? Which parameters will need to reach their most extreme versions to satisfy the needs of the story? And what will that look like? Will you hit your highest pitch in the entire piece? Will your tempo reach an all-time high or low? How many different octaves will your melody be taking up? If you're interested in learning more about how to use each of these parameters to tell a story, check out my book on film scoring, The Musical Storyteller, Translating Worlds, Characters, and Emotions into Music. You can find the ebook and audiobook versions on my website at the link below. Now, not every parameter needs to be used to create the climax. Only a choice few are actually necessary, and the specific ones you select will vary from piece to piece. However, what won't vary is that every decision you make as a composer should be made with this information in mind. The local peaks of each phrase help build into the local peak of each paragraph, and the local peak of each paragraph helps build into the climax of the entire piece. Now, that isn't to say that the growth should be linear. No good story consists of a straight, simple line from the start of the story straight into its climax. The same is true for your music. There will be moments when a particular paragraph may bring you further away from the peak than the previous one did. For example, let's say that you're writing a theme where rhythm is super important. At the climax, you plan on just blitzing away at a furious pattern of syncopated 16th notes. In this scenario, you might start out with a bunch of slow half notes in the first paragraph. The next paragraph could speed up significantly with eighth notes, before the third paragraph slows things back down to quarter notes, before, bam, arriving right at the climax in paragraph 4. You see, what matters isn't so much how quickly and neatly you arrive at the climax, but rather how you set it up. By manipulating the rhythm across each paragraph, you are subtly preparing your audience to understand, at least subconsciously, that the rhythm will play an important part in the climax of your piece. Now, I'm not saying to get too crazy with it. As a general rule, the more simple your progression towards the climax is, the more effective it will be. However, a few wrong turns here and there can be useful for keeping things interesting to your audience. In a similar vein, not all climactic parameters need to move together. For example, if both rhythm and dynamics are important to your climax, one paragraph could bring you closer to your dynamic peak while simultaneously pushing you further away from your rhythmic peak. The general idea here is that the contrast between how each parameter is approaching the climax helps build interest and complexity, while similarities between how they approach it will reduce complexity but build energy. So, now that we have a better understanding of how to structure your music, Let's take a quick look at how this information can be applied. When planning the larger structure of a piece of music, the first thing you should do is consider what story your music needs to tell. What is the most climactic moment in that story? With a strong understanding of what your music needs to accomplish, pick a few parameters of your music that you think can really help portray that climactic moment. How will they accomplish this? Next, think of the other moments in your story. What events lead up to the climax? What events take place afterwards? Make a list of which events you want to dedicate paragraphs to. And with that order of story events in mind, consider what kind of musical material you need. How many motifs or themes do you think will be necessary to best serve the story? Once you have a decent idea, assign the material to each paragraph by asking which sections should contain which themes. Next, consider how each paragraph can manipulate the climactic parameters to bring them closer to or further away from the climax. Keeping in mind that the parameters moving in the opposite direction help build interest and complexity, while parameters moving in the same direction help build momentum. With each of these local peaks figured out, make a short plan for each paragraph. What thematic material will be included in each one? How many phrases will there be? How will each phrase contribute towards the peak of the paragraph? Etc., etc. Once you've taken the time to figure out each of these details, you'll have a detailed map that you can consult while writing your piece. It can provide a reliable reference to keep your ideas focused and ensure that the ebb and flow of motivic ideas, as well as the overall momentum in your music, help to tell the story that you want. By planning things out ahead of time, you can make sure that the intimate moments of your music help get your ideas across, and that the climactic moments land with the exact amount of punch and pizzazz that you're looking for. Perhaps most importantly, with a piece properly planned and structured ahead of time, you can diminish as much risk of writer's block as possible. And with that, we have reached the end of another video. I hope you found it helpful. If you did, please like and subscribe to the channel and share your favorite videos anywhere you think others might find them helpful. Remember, if you're interested in learning more about telling stories with music, please consider checking out my new book on film scoring. The link is in the description. I want to thank my patrons one more time for their incredible support of this channel. I appreciate each and every one of you more than you know. And I also want to thank each of you who are watching these videos and sharing them with your friends. Your wonderful comments, messages, and emails mean the world to me and help keep me excited to continue making new content. So until next time, keep studying, keep working hard, and keep writing new music.